First name is Sun, last name is On. What can I say about myself? I don't know what you all know about me. I have been on the faculty at Peabody Conservatory since 1997. I am what they call a Beethoven scholar and sketch specialist, which means I spent inordinate amount of time staring at Beethoven's writing and his process for composition of a major middle period work that we'll talk about in a little while, next week, possibly. I also am the director for the music minor program at Hopkins. I teach graduate students most of the time and some undergraduates. I've taught a range of classes, and then I also have sort of a side teaching portion of my career as teaching film. So I have a wonderful Katharine Hepburn film class for undergraduates and a class on Asian representation in film, also at Peabody in the liberal arts program. I was once a fairly serious pianist, was that kid who practiced 3 to 5 hours a day in high school. Went off to Yale to try to do both, and found that musicology was very alluring, went straight into graduate school, and have kept up with the business since then, but have built a sort of unusual portfolio career, as they say. All right, welcome everyone. I would love, let me first share my screen momentarily to give everybody a sense of how I hope today will go. Okay, let us go back to the PowerPoint. Here are some basic dates. Mozart, Beethoven, and this triumvirate. All right, today's lecture is Beethoven in the Shadow of Mozart. So those of you, I'm assuming everybody knows here that Mozart and Beethoven and the dates for Haydn, who's significantly older, that's the basic time frame for them. What do people know about Mozart? Prolific and well known, and Ludwig van Beethoven's connection to Mozart when it comes to his admiration for the fella. He admired him. Did he meet Mozart? He tried. He tried in his teens. So Beethoven was born in Bonn, a Kleinstadt, a little city on the Rhine, right? Also, precocious, but not as precocious as Mozart. Great admirer of Mozart's work, wanted to meet Mozart, attempted to go to Vienna in 1786-ish, 87-ish, as a teenager. We think he may have met him, but he didn't work with him, and then he had to turn around because his mom was sick. And so his mother became ill, and Beethoven had to return and go back to Bonn. And then by the time after his mother passed, Mozart dies. So the important thing to know is that Beethoven was tremendously disappointed that he wasn't able to work with Mozart. He did eventually go to Vienna, 1792. His birthday is in December. So when you're trying to think of Beethoven as a young man in his early 20s, arriving in Vienna, sent off with all the accolades of his friends in Bonn. You're going to follow in the footsteps of Mozart, even though Mozart has passed away. And he lands in Vienna as a young 20-year-old. I like to tell students, and during this COVID time, it seems to make a great deal of sense to sort of equate their kind of disappointments with the high school kids who haven't been able to really go off to college for the first time. It's the same kind of disappointment of not working with his hero. And ultimately he studied with Haydn, who was significantly older, a different generation. He worked with Haydn and Mozart worked together. We have letters to show that Mozart, Haydn and Beethoven did not necessarily get along particularly well. But Beethoven was certainly influenced by Haydn. All right, that's just a brief overview. You all know all of this because you're all quite savvy. Haydn knew Mozart's work well. I do not know about the actual gatherings of the two. I must say that that has not been documented at length. Mozart was really a product of his father's training, and then he landed in Vienna and had a huge patronage following at that point. Vienna was a center of excellence. It's the Habsburg Empire, the court there. There was a bit, so it was a major city, right? Mm-hmm. Court city with flourishing opera and a flourishing musical scene. Patrons, aristocrats, all landed in Vienna. Let me say before we go to the next, because I want to spend time with talking about music, and we could do an hour and a half. We might want to think about that next time. One of the things that I want to stress also is that Beethoven, even though this is not this class, a huge component of understanding Mozart's output is his fame as an opera composer, which is something that Beethoven did not necessarily follow. He admired it. He tried several times to write the same opera more than once, but opera was not Beethoven's strength. Instrumental music was more Beethoven's strength. All right, but it's something I want you all to be aware of. Haydn wrote a great deal of chamber music, many symphonies also, and a number of oratorios. So choral music and orchestral music also was a big hallmark for Haydn. Okay, all right. I think we should start talking about some music. Some overall piano trio thoughts. Beethoven's first published work in Vienna is in fact a piano trio. All right. It's funny, if you ask pianists and you go, what's Beethoven's first work? Sometimes they'll remember that it's Opus 1 is a piano trio. But sometimes they have to think twice because the Opus 2 is the first set of piano sonatas. All right. One thing I wanted to stress for you all, I should have put this on a separate document, but opus means publish, right? There are plenty of works that Beethoven wrote that did not get published. All right, and so for those of you who might have poked around in Beethoven scholarship, there's a WOO number that we associate with non-published works of Beethoven. And Beethoven scholars like to call them WOO numbers. In German, it's Werke ohne Opuszahl, works without opus numbers, right? And so that's an important thing to know, that opus means publish. Piano trio was the first work that Beethoven published in Vienna, performed and published in 1795, dedicated to Prince Lichnowsky. The output of his predecessors, of Mozart and Haydn, for this particular genre. Mozart completed 3 piano trios, 3 of which are composed toward the end of his short life. All right. Kirchel. If you all don't know that, this is a nice little side thing. Kirchel numbers. Kirchel was a scholar who put Mozart's works in chronological order. All right, so scholars sometimes differ about that too, because we'll find out that the initial chronological order, when you look at certain sketches and certain autographs, you realize might not actually be in the proper order. So usually, it means that 542 was written before 548, 548 was written before 564. All right, but sometimes they change, and if you're a nerdy musicologist like me, you start to memorize which Kirchel volumes and which version means that there's a different set of Kirchel numbers. If you see a KV number also, that's Kirchel Verzeichnis, Kirchel Index, it's the same thing. But what we can say is generally, the larger the number, the later in life. So the 500s means we usually place them well after 1785-ish, okay? Hoboken numbers, that's another number that's used for putting Haydn works in order. And Hoboken, for the trios, have the Roman numeral 15, and he wrote between 30 and 40, and it depends on how you count them. That's why I'm not giving you a precise number. There are trios that can be played with flute. Should they be considered in the same cluster or not? Just know that they were both prolific. An important thing in the piano trio, the trio that he publishes Opus 1 as a trio rather than the piano sonata, it offers a vehicle for Beethoven to demonstrate his virtuosity as a pianist. And it also offers a vehicle for him to perform with other Viennese musicians at the time, right? It's very strategic on his part, if you think about it. It's very strategic because he's a youngin' right now. He's a young guy in Vienna, and he's going to make his way. So he's going to, the chamber work offers collaboration, not just as a soloist. And sonatas are getting printed, but they have both greater prominence in people's homes for more informal performances also, and it means that people are purchasing, and it's a vehicle for him to earn money, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be published in a public way to promote him as a performer in Vienna in the same way. So Opus 1, the overview. There are 3 works comprised in the piano trio. Opus 1, there's Opus 1, Opus 1, 2, and Opus 1, 3. All right, I just want you, we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time, but I want you to just sort of see this configuration of movement types. 4 movements, all of them. They are crystal clear, almost student perfect of the type of trio that Haydn and Mozart will have written. All right, but they're going to have a Beethovenian stamp on them too. All right, so we're going to take a look at this one, but are you all, let me unshare. No, I won't share it. I'd like you all to just jump in and tell me the average 4 movement type. First movement is usually in what form? Sorry if you don't know. I'm just wondering, like, what do people know about these works? They're usually allegro, so tempo fast, and frequently something called sonata form. All right. Second movement tends to be slow. Third movement tends to be something in triple meter, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. Scherzo, minuet, and then a finale that's fast. That could either be sonata form or rondo form. All right. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the outer movements are the faster ones. The inner ones tend to be slower, right? And the outer ones tend to also should be in the same key, right? Over here, it's C minor and goes to C major. That is a big deal for him to go to C major in this last one. We talk a lot about the motion to C major in Beethoven's 5th Symphony, which starts out in the same key as C minor and moves eventually to C major. He's already doing early things, moving to C minor to C major in this last work, but we're going to spend some time here. Okay, I thought, let's do some listening. What I'd like to do first is just play the beginning of each movement with an older set of musicians: Isaac Stern, Leonard Rose, Eugene Eastman. They were prominent musicians in the 70s, and we'll start with them. And I just want to play the beginning of each movement and then have a thought of, I just want you to all have that in your ear first, okay? So Isaac Stern, violinist who basically saved Carnegie Hall, Eugene Eastman. Leonard Rose, responsible for producing just about every cellist who came out of Juilliard, including Matt Heimovitz and Yo-Yo Ma. And Mr. Eastman was a remarkable concert pianist as well. Your soloists playing chamber together. stop it there. And I'm going to switch to a different excerpt that I'd like you all to see. Same music, now the musical score. All right, and if this is something that makes people feel uncomfortable, I want you to let me know either in the chat or an email afterwards, because I want to figure out how far we should go with some of this. This is the same music, starts in the key of E flat, and what I'd like you to do is, and it's a different set of performers, and I'd like you, this is the first theme, and I'd like you to think about the distribution of the instruments, and I'm going to stop it at the second theme in the key of E flat. That's the second theme. Think about this, what you've heard. All right, I'm going to stop it there. Second theme, for those of you who read music, this is in the dominant key of B flat. It started out in E flat. It's now moved to the key of B flat, which is known as the dominant, or 5 sometimes. And what must happen when it comes back later, it must be in the key of E flat. It must be in that. The sonata form demands that that second theme has to be in the same key as the original one. All right, is this helpful to look at us, to watch them and then see the score and to see the music going past? Or is it, and if you find it bewildering and maddening, send me an email, all right, because we'll make do with it, okay? All right, I'm just trying to gauge how people are, because we could go in any number of directions. Okay, what I'd like to do, well, what did you hear? A lot of piano. So Beethoven is written so he can show off, right? There's a lot of noodling around. The fastest notes go in the piano, right? He's going to change that later when he gets older, but like he's going to say, I'm the pianist, I'm the center. That's what you can show us. So that's true. Almost piano against the strings. Almost, if you want to split them, all right? But there are some lovely, lovely lines where the melodic material is tossed to the individual instruments. And I will also say that he gives the cello more presence than, say, either Mozart or Haydn. Ask any cellist about playing Haydn trios and they'll usually say, what else am I supposed to do? What else? Okay, it's like they can rest. They can usually have a full meal and drink before playing, and then go out on the stage. Like Haydn's not a big deal. But if they're playing a different work, even this one, they have to prepare just a bit because there's more going on. Okay, let me play the beginning of each movement with the players, just so that we have it in our ears. So just the beginning of the second move, beginning of the third, beginning of the fourth. So we have the standard 4 movement structure in our ears. Nice place to stop. Beginning of the third movement, faster. Scherzo. Scherzo means joke. And so usually the humor occurs here if we're going to have a funny moment. It's the end of the second movement. The third movement generally has many, many repeats in them, so we won't dwell on it right now. Finale, runs like the wind, also quite humorous. I'm going to stop it there. Forgive me. All right. That gives you a general sense of a typical four-movement chamber work, early work by Beethoven, showing off the piano and showing off his own abilities. I am going to move past quite a few of these slides because I'm concerned about time. All right. I want to move to the violin sonata, but I'm going to shortchange it a bit. All right. Opus 12 is Beethoven's first violin sonata, sonata for violin. There are three works, just as there were three works comprised for Opus 1. There are three of them in Opus 12. We're going to look at number 1 momentarily, composed in 1797 through 1798, dedicated to Salieri. You all might remember the old movie Amadeus, where Salieri plots the demise of Mozart in that particular movie. One thing I want you to walk away with also is the terminology in Beethoven's time is sonata for piano with violin obbligato. And I thought you all would enjoy seeing this. We're going to jump to Bonn. Get a load of this. This is the first print in Bonn. All right. And let me see if I can expand it a bit. There it is, dedicated to 3 sonatas per il clavicembalo o forte piano. You all have better Italian than I, with a violin. It's later that Beethoven actually makes the nomenclature match so that the violin and the piano are truly equals. But until a later work, basically it's piano with the violin obligated. And composed and dedicated to Salieri. I thought you all would enjoy this. And I will give you these links so that if you want to play around to look at some various things in the Beethoven House in Bonn, let me stop sharing for a moment. Bonn was the capital, it's not anymore. So the thing is, if you go to Bonn now, the only thing that's left there is Beethoven stuff. Beethoven tchotchkes. I mean, everything, Beethoven wigs, Beethoven gloves, Beethoven branding, that's all they have right now. It's quite funny, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that, all right? But I thought you would enjoy seeing that. I will, you'll have the link available if you want to play in the Beethoven House. But the aside from all of the tchotchkes, there is a library, an extraordinary research library where which is connected to Beethoven's birth house. So Beethoven's birth house has been preserved. It's a great tourist site. And then there's an amazing library and an amazing concert hall next door. And they have many of the original documents that have his manuscripts, first prints, when they're found, and a lot of them got distributed after World War II. A lot of them are in fact in Poland after the war. Did anybody see the movie Monuments Men about art that got distributed after the war? Same thing happened with the library. Berlin started bombing, and they go, we have to take care of this. And so things got crated and sent out in various trucks, and a huge holding is now in Krakow. I've been there. It's an amazing site, and Germany would like it back, but Poland said, no, thank you. We have it, and they've taken beautiful care of it. If you've, let me just recommend, if you're ever in Krakow, it's one, the city hasn't been bombed. It's still beautiful, and the librarians there, thank goodness. I don't speak Polish, but thank goodness my French and my German were strong enough to get me through to look at some manuscripts in Krakow a long time ago when I was a younger scholar. It was a lot of fun, and I got scolded by a lot of librarians who didn't like me touching various manuscripts. But the funny thing about doing research is that if you've got the French and the German and some Italian also, will get you quite far in various libraries because everybody can speak multiple languages, right? Okay, I digress. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna rush through parts of this. What I want to just demonstrate for now is here are the movement types for the first sonata in D major. Fast movement on the outside, a rondo, also fast on the outside, movement 1 and 3 with a theme and variations. And rather, I'm going to allow you all, we're not going to hear Anna Sophie Mutter and Lambert Orcas playing for various reasons also, but what I thought what we would do is let me show you another score, the very beginning of a score. And we'll play, let's hope this works. The opening, and we'll play a little bit of each movement. Stop it there. And let me just have us look at a score together. They're playing together, right? All together. And then the piano accompanies as the violin sings above, and then they switch parts. All right. Question? Did I hear somebody want to, was that a question? No? Second movement, theme and variations. The theme and variations is not an unusual place for second theme, for a theme and variations, but is an exquisite place for chamber music. I call chamber music gourmet music because everything is localized. One can show off in various ways. All right, so let me just play the very beginning of this theme and variations, the theme, and then a little bit of some variations with the score so that you can see what's happening on the score rather than the violin this time around. So this is a lovely dialogue between two instruments. And when one has fewer instrumentalists on stage or in a room, there's more intimacy and more exchange, and one can hear the tossing back of various themes between the instruments. I think do I have this card? Let me see if this is, yes, I can actually not have to switch scenes. Here's the first variation. me play the beginning of the second variation. I promise that the violin gets to show off eventually. There you go. There you go. All right, up in the stratosphere, over here, right? And I won't play the next variation, but invariably, if the variations is in major, there will be a minor. So eventually there's one in a switch in a mode that sounds sadder. All right, I think I need to launch. I'll just play the very beginning of the rondo. A rondo always has a very memorable theme because it keeps coming back and forth. Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. If we were to do an analysis, you would see that he's actually in a new key here. He's going to 5. All right. Let me move very quickly to the Opus 18 string quartet. Important points. String quartet as a genre was and is regarded as demanding, and in Beethoven's time considered a noble genre. All right. Mozart and Haydn both made significant contributions to this genre. Haydn is considered the father of the string quartet, and Mozart dedicated a set of string quartets to Haydn. They are beautiful. And so think of a young Beethoven with the shadow of these two big guys who've made great contributions to the string quartet, and he's going to write his first one. Major points, Opus 18 number 3, G major, was probably composed first. But this work, the F major, opens the published set. The second movement references Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. We have a sketch in which he talks about various scenes like the crypt. This work, extremely long movements, longer than, leading in some ways to the symphony in terms of length, fugal passages in the outer movements, and there were many revisions. In fact, Beethoven was so concerned about releasing his string quartets that, in fact, he had written an older version to his friend Carl Amenda, and he said, don't let it go. And he saved it, but we actually have it. That's the strange thing. So there's one scholar named Janet Levy who did the most intense analysis of the old version and the new version. And it's fun to watch. Okay, but for our purposes, it's just important to know basically these 6 major points about Opus 18 number 1. We're going to show today the part of the Berg quartet then. All right, and they were the funky group that actually were the early quartets who recorded on CDs. And let me just say that was a big deal when I was in college when the CDs came out. I'll just play the very beginning of each movement, and then we'll have our marching orders for next week. We are in the second theme area right now. What I hope you heard was the equality of all the four voices. And that's why the challenge of the genre is to make all of these four different voices sing in different ways. That texture poses a challenge for the average composer. In fact, to this day at Harvard, it used, well, maybe not so much, maybe even at least 15 years ago, you still had to write a string quartet in order to earn your PhD in composition, right? So it's still a revered genre. Let us play the beginning of the second movement. He did play viola and some violin that we know. And then he consulted with other musicians when he wrote his violin concerto. And he consulted, we believe, with cellists when he wrote his first cello sonata, which we're not covering. Answered? Yes? Okay. Stop it there for a moment, and I thought I would switch. Let's just play the beginning of the second movement of a different group. This is the Ariel Quartet. They're different, slightly different. Their playing is different. I'm curious what you all hear. stop it there, show one last thing, and then I want to hear your feedback so I don't screw up on sharing my screen. I thought you all would enjoy seeing this. This is a sketch leaf from Berlin of Beethoven's handwriting. Oh yeah, isn't that fun? And the thing is, remember how I said that Beethoven probably wrote Opus 18.3 first? And here's one of the pieces of evidence that we use. So here are these sketches for Opus 18. And then down here, there's a sketch for Opus 18 number 1. All right. I just thought it would be good to discuss sort of the kind of evidence that we use when we make these kind of dating assertions and proposals. All right, take very good care. I'll see you all in a week.